Hello everyone, my name is Alan and today we're going to talk a little bit about the last video where we started creating AltosWeb. I took it to a little bit of a new level. I'm not going to necessarily show you all the changes that I made, but I want to explain some of the key things that I did. Noticeably, about the only thing I think that's noticeable is that the menu's been restyled so that when you hover it changes color and it's kind of attached to the header in such a way. It's basically the same thing. I think the width is a little bit more aligned now than before. Um, you're looking at my CSS over on the left hand side, you'll see basically what I did is I created a wrapper class, and in my index.html file I surrounded all of the main tags with wrapper. And if you remember from the last one, we basically chose the header and the main and the footer and the nav section up here, but now I'm going to use a wrapper instead to do the work of keeping it to a certain width and everything else. This wrapper element will help us later on when we want to start looking at responsive design. Anywho, it's basically the same site as before. I think I added just a touch of line height, and most of the work was done on the nav element, where I changed the background color to that E2, E2, E2 gray color, and then edited the unordered list in the LI a little bit with CSS to do a row with each cell and take away margin and padding, and then change the color of the A tag and take the underline off of it, and then actually add a on hover attribute so that when the mouse cursor is hovered over the area, those things will change. So this what 6 lines of code. Not too bad. Other improvements I've made to the CSS are that I've added comments for the author and the date, and I would suggest that you guys do this as well before you turn it in, hopefully. And I've broken up my CSS documents into kind of an order that I like, where I put my major elements at the top, or resets, which I will cover a little bit later about CSS resets, and continue down, and then provide some common styles that at the bottom. Later we'll add probably some responsive CSS down here as well. That's really all I've done to upgrade the site a little bit, but I did want to walk you through just a little bit of some debugging options that when you're working on a site, what you can do to look at it. So I'm going to open it up a little bit more here just so I can pull up the development bar with F12. And I can see that there's my wrapper class is showing now. And I can open it up and see that each of my different sections are inside the page now, inside the wrapper div. And yeah, so it just kind of helps. The wrapper holds everything in, and it's kind of the same as before, and I edited some rules. In order, what I wanted to show you was W3 markup service, and when you go to it, you can do a validate by file upload, and choose file, use the index, and check. If you get green up here at the top, that means you're doing good. Warnings, I think, are probably okay. I think you're always going to get this conformance checker experimental feature thing, and we're not specifying a UTF character type. So if I put a meta tag at the top, that one might go away, but I'm not worried about that one. So in addition to using F12 to work on a page, this is Internet Explorer, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys why, if you've ever caught up with trends or anything, why everybody hates Internet Explorer in the web development world. Good news is F12 does work in Internet Explorer, and I think I'm using IE11. Yes, and IE11 does well. It's doing the same as Chrome. Everything looks the same, pretty much. Where all the hate for Microsoft comes in is the older versions of browsers. Oh goodness. So down here in the development bar, very last autumn, in this crazy little thing they have here on the left, is you can turn the document mode around. So you can choose previous versions, and it'll emulate previous versions of Internet Explorer. So this is IE11, but on IE10 it would have looked like this. and you can see there's a blue box showed up around the image up here. The reason being is because in my code I have my logo hyperlinked, and presumably this would be back to my home page at some point. But for some reason, older versions of IE, images that are hyperlinked will display a blue box like this. It's just kind of the default Internet Explorer thing that happens. You can write a CSS rule around it, which is basically to um, turn the border off. And if you do that, hopefully that would go away. Yeah, well, let's hope so. Now it's on the image, that's right. It's the image that has the border. Yeah. So by doing that, I was able to take the blue border off, but it's just one of those things, if you didn't know, you'd have to spend a lot of time going through the internet trying to figure out, hey, why is there a blue box around my version of Internet Explorer? And it's just, for some reason, it's a default behavior in Internet Explorer. Anyway, I'm going to take this rule back out because I like using that as a perfect example of why Internet Explorer's had its older versions are pretty bad. So that was IE10, and that's basically the only difference that we see in the page. IE9, I think we're basically going to get the same look. Nothing big there. Like I said, IE9 was the first version of Internet Explorer to somewhat support HTML5, so it's definitely workable, but maybe not the best. As you progress further into more complicated things, it might show more difficulty. Anyhow, IE8 is basically a non-HTML5 browser. There's a technique called using an HTML5 shiv that you can add into your page that would allow older versions of IE to still interpret the page pretty well. But by default, IE8 and additionally IE7 or previous versions would not render the page at all because HTML5 is not recognized by older versions of Internet Explorer. Anyway, that's a pretty easy way to start debugging coding in pages, and especially in different browsers. Uh, what I've basically learned is that Chrome is a good standard for the WebKit-based browsers. That is Firefox and Opera and Safari and Chrome itself, and some of the Linux offshoots as well. The WebKit being kind of a shared library that everybody builds off of. Internet Explorer is different in that they don't really use it. I think in later versions they've kind of understood that they have to go towards a WebKit based or or some kind of clone maybe to stay relevant in today's web. So anywho, hopefully with seeing that adding comments, another thing that I did was I went through, in addition to adding the wrappers, I went through and I started indenting different sections of my page and adding comment code so that I could see exactly where divs are ending, and they stick out to me, especially in Notepad++ because of the different colors. It's kind of easy to see, oh, well, this is my ending div wrapper. That kind of thing will get important if the more you start embedding divs inside of divs inside of divs and different types of things, you can use comments to help keep track of them. Anywho, I hope this is a little bit helpful. Hopefully I'll take this site a little bit further and show some and use it as a working copy of things that people are having difficulties with in the future. Anyway, have a good day and goodbye.